And finally tonight, as it turns out, he lived quietly in a 3-story house in a resort town, right down the street from a military academy, not far from the capital city. And it's kind of hard to believe for many Americans to see this story and see how the Pakistani government didn't know anything about it, about bin Laden's whereabouts. Bin Laden wasn't armed when the Navy SEALs stormed into his compound. CIA Director Leon Panetta told members of Congress that bin Laden had cash and 2 telephone numbers sewn into his clothes, a sign that he was ready to run at a moment's notice. So why wasn't he more closely guarded? According to a source who attended the Panetta briefing, bin Laden believed his network actually was strong enough that he'd get a heads up if trouble was coming. This sure seems to explain the U.S. decision not to alert the Pakistanis about their plans for a raid to get him. As Panetta explained previously, any effort to work with the Pakistanis could jeopardize the mission. For its part, Pakistan says it helped the United States mission by providing intelligence. So what should the United States do with our supposed ally? We give billions of dollars in aid each year to this country. Some members of Congress are calling to scale back the funds to Pakistan or cut it off entirely. Which road do we take? Joining me now is Congressman Barney Frank, Democrat of Massachusetts. Congressman, good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
Has this strained our relations immensely with Pakistan? Where are we right now, in your opinion?
Well, there's a bit of a dilemma, but I think, and you can't just look at Pakistan, you have to look at Afghanistan. But let's begin with this question that's now dominating Washington, which is our deficit. We are now spending $150 billion a year plus in Afghanistan and Iraq. Throw in the billions more for Pakistan, and it is clear that that's where deficit reduction can begin at no serious damage to the quality of life or anything else valuable to the U.S. Now that Osama bin Laden is dead, and that is a very good thing for the world because he was a great source of evil, the arguments for staying in Afghanistan dramatically diminish. And the Pakistan issue is connected here. What we are trying to do in Afghanistan, beyond getting Osama bin Laden, cannot be done. It is now clear that Pakistan, and it had been fairly clear, is going to be a support sufficiently to elements of those we are fighting, so that fighting in Afghanistan alone isn't enough. And we really can't undertake fighting in Pakistan, but the good news is that we don't have to. If we would cut back the $160 billion or so that the combined Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan efforts are costing us, and took a small percentage of that and use it to beef up our protections here at home, we'd be safer.
So Congressman, would you take the position that we need to continue to give aid to Pakistan no matter how this raid went down?
No, not at all. And I think there are other reasons why Pakistan ought to be cut back. I think what we need to do is not cut them off exactly, but stop acting like they are doing us a favor. Look, that's a big problem with American foreign policy. Through all the presidents, we act as if China is doing us a favor by having this enormous trade surplus. That Pakistan and Afghanistan are doing us favors. We're almost like Tom Sawyer getting people to paint the fence, asking the Iraqis to let us stay in Iraq another year or two so that we can police them. What we need to say is, look, we are prepared to cooperate with you, but only if it's an even kind of cooperation.
Yeah.
I would say to the Pakistanis, there are things we need you to do, and either you do them or we're out of here.
Congressman, I got to switch gears on you here. Eric Cantor's office is now pushing back on the Washington Post headline that we reported earlier in the show. The Washington Post was reporting that the GOP was backing off their plan to gut Medicare in the budget talks. Cantor's spokesman says in response, quoting to us, our negotiating position is the Ryan budget. What's your response to this? Is Medicare safe?
Listen carefully to what he said, that our negotiating position is the Ryan budget. That's very different from we are for the Ryan budget. Our negotiating position means that's what we start with and that's what we're ready to give away. Look, they have a terrible dilemma. They have a political dilemma because after demagoguing inaccurately that we were cutting Medicare when we were extending health benefits to many Americans who don't now have it.
Yeah.
They are the ones who were seriously cutting Medicare. And it's not just a political problem, it's a wholly illogical one. The Ryan budget says if you're 55 or older, you'll get Medicare. If you're not 55 yet, you'll never get Medicare.
Yeah.
You'll get much less. Well, what sense does that make? If it's a good program, why do we deny it to people who are 52 years old who've worked and put money into it? And if it's not a good program, why are you continuing it? So they have both a political and an intellectual problem. And I think I'm interested that Cantor said that. That's their negotiating position.
Yeah.
A negotiating position is what you back away from, not what you firmly hold to.
And the Wall Street Journal is reporting tonight that there is a deal in the works on Medicare. Are you aware of any deal that's in the works at this hour?
No, and I'm not prepared to make a deal on Medicare. Let me go back to what I said before. Before I start cutting Medicare, and I'm very reluctant to do that, and I'd have to be shown how it can be done without hurting the quality of service, I don't want to spend $155 billion a year in Iraq and Afghanistan and a few extra billion thrown in for Pakistan. We need to scale back America's overstretched worldwide military commitments before we start talking about cutting medical care here at home.
80% of the American people do not want Medicare and Medicaid touched. It would seem to me that that's a pretty strong position for the Democrats to say we're not going here. What do you think?
Absolutely, and that's what we have been saying so far. Understand that 20% you were talking about becomes relevant because they dominate Republican primaries. We have a party now in which the fear of losing to someone delusional in a primary is what absolutely dominates.
Congressman, great to have you with us tonight. Massachusetts Representative Barney Frank here on The Ed Show. Thank you so much. Tonight in our survey, I asked you, did the White House make the right decision by not releasing the photo? 90% of you said yes. 10% of you said no. That's The Ed Show. I'm Ed Schultz. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now here on MSNBC.